Okay, we are live. Well, hey, Grizz, happy 4th of July.
Happy 4th of July, everyone. Yes, exciting.
Yeah, it's hot here, so I don't even know what we're going to do today, honestly, other than just maybe go in the pool. But it's like 112, I think, today, so we'll be inside for most of it.
It's raining and storming here in Kentucky, so I don't know what is going to happen here. But it's cool. I wish you were here. It's a lot cooler here in Kentucky than
I
Arizona.
am, yeah, I'm feeling a little envious. I can I can feel that energy coming up because I love the rain and I love storms, and we don't get a whole lot of that in Phoenix.
We'll get y'all here one day. We'll get the whole family here. It'll be
Yeah,
a fun trip.
I'm excited. Yeah. Yeah, well, in honor of the 4th of July and liberty and freedom, I'm excited to kind of dive into with you, Grizz, this idea of how microdosing supports emotional freedom. I think as the movement has been gaining all this traction, people are very curious about what it does, and there's some very real science behind how it supports emotional freedom. And then there's the whole side about like, how do you do the work that leads you in that direction, right?
Freedom. Yes. Was that Braveheart, or is that right?
I
Mel
have
Gibson.
not seen Braveheart.
Interesting. Another, you should have said that on our last podcast about the two truths and a lie. I feel like everybody's seen that.
Yeah, it's kind of iconic, isn't it?
I think so.
Yeah, no, I haven't seen it.
Movies.
But anyway, so yeah, I gosh, I could talk all day about this, but let's start with some of the mistakes that we see people doing, because we run this Facebook group, right? And we're talking to hundreds of people all the time about how they're microdosing and helping them get better results. And so it's interesting to kind of see some of these same patterns come up over and over again. So I think,
this is huge.
Are we focusing on two today?
Yeah, I'm excited. I think this is going to be a breakthrough for a lot of people, not just moms, but I think a lot of moms, especially in our group, that are starting to, have these awakening symptoms. I'm getting a lot of moms that, these synchronicities are happening and these voices are happening like never before. And so these mistakes that we're going to talk about, play directly into a lot of these things that these moms are experiencing. And so, and I'm seeing just these like freedom from a lot of the moms, right? And so it's perfect. 4th of July. This is perfect.
Yeah, yes, because that is the goal, right? Emotional freedom. My goodness, it should not be impossible to attain. I think I've had quite a long journey getting to this space. But anyway, back to the mistakes. The biggest, I would say, well, there's multiple, but I think the ones that are bubbling to the surface most recently that I've been seeing is, the first one is, and maybe not so much for the moms in our group, but in some of the other groups I'm in, on Reddit and just the broader movement, people are thinking that they're making a lateral switch from replacing antidepressants with microdosing, replacing, their pharmaceutical medications with plant medicine, and doing the same things they were doing before, whether that was nothing or whether that was maybe seeing a therapist or something. But so the biggest mistake is that you're just taking the medicine every day, expecting things to change on their own, which is, you'll see some benefit because there is science, there's neurobiological processes happening, but you will not see the big shifts, or you maybe won't know how to work with some of the things that come up. right?
Yeah, shift came to mind, and it was funny you said that right then. But like, yeah, being able to shift, shifting into this other space that's outside of that old program, and the pharmaceutical, um, you know, even like you said, the procedures, and like taking it and taking it every day, like you said, and expecting things to change like the pharmaceuticals do. It's not the same. It's a lot of it's very different, and I think it's why it pays to have an expert, somebody like you and I, that can help
Mm-hmm.
in this space, in this
Yeah,
new.
some kind of guide for the journey. Yeah, because this brings me to the second mistake, and that is being too attached to your current healing practice. And what do I mean when I say that? I mean specifically thinking to yourself that I am doing all the right things. And so if something isn't working, it's not because of me, it's because of the medicine, or it's because of this relationship, or it's because of X, Y, or Z. So I think modern mainstream healing messaging centers around this idea that like your practice should have a morning meditation ritual. You should do yoga several times a week. You should do you should do these couple of things that are part of your healing practice. You should set intentions and focus on integration, and all of that is is good. There's nothing wrong with any one of those things. However, if you're engaging in all of that and you're still not seeing the breakthroughs that you want to see, then that means that your energetic requirements are different, which shouldn't be surprising. That means there's other things that you can do in order to honor your own energetic flow cycles.
And I think about too that we use the word attached to a certain modality,
Mm-hmm.
but I think about a lot of these moms I'm talking to. I hear them giving their power away, and so they're extremely attached to yoga or meditation or
Mm-hmm.
this certification. I got this certification, and they're giving their power away, and through what we're teaching, especially in the mentorship, is this is totally different than the mainstream ways of teaching what we're doing. So what we're doing, I feel like, is helping these moms tap into their own unique mechanism, their own practice, right? It's going to be unique, and that's why I'm seeing and I'm finding, talking to the moms, that they're frustrated with the yoga, or they're frustrated with the meditation, or whatever they're doing, and they're not pulling it back in, right? Like tapping back into their unique way of how it's going to work for them, because it's not going to work the same for another mom like it's going to work for them. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that meditation, yoga, all that stuff works for a lot of people.
oh yeah, I love it.
And yeah, I use it too. I have an interesting relationship with meditation. I'm one of those people that really struggles to have a traditional meditation practice. And yet I have, honored my own energetic flow cycles to find my own unique mechanisms. And even where I am, even with all the work that I've done, I still know that the first place to look if I'm getting results that I'm wanting to look at a little more deeply is at my practice. Recognizing, like, am I too attached to the practice itself, or is there something I can change and move around? Because as humans, we ebb and we flow, and honoring where we are in that process with our own energy helps us determine the specific things that are really going to open up healing pathway. So yeah, so just a quick recap here. The two biggest mistakes. The first one is just taking the medication as a replace, or taking the microdose as a replacement for pharmaceutical medications and not doing anything different, and being too attached to your current healing practice, because that messaging might be coming in from outside of you, and it just might not be congruent with what you need in your own practice. Because the goal is getting to this space of emotional freedom. That's where we want to get to. We want to get to the space of emotional freedom. So let's pause for a minute and talk about emotional freedom. Like, what are we talking about when we're talking about emotional freedom? Do you have any initial thoughts on that, Chris?
I don't have all the science behind it like you do, but the way I feel is just magical, kind of comes to mind. Yeah, relief, flow, new. It's new. It's new for me. Even being in this space for this long, it's new. But it just feels right. Like it feels like how things are supposed to be. You know, just even us connecting, different things, magical things happen in my life. It's like, gosh, this is how things are supposed to work. And so just yeah,
Mm-hmm.
relief.
Yeah, relief. I resonate with that. It does feel like there's relief in the space that you get to. So from my perspective, thinking about emotional freedom, we're really looking at, or at least this is what I've had in my own experience. So it's being able to maybe come up against a trigger or a challenge, something that is maybe difficult or causing some inner tension, coming up to that and through that, while having some inner space. So before microdosing, if I experienced a trigger, my nervous system would be activated, and I would, my trauma responses would start firing, and it felt like there was nothing I could do to respond differently. Like my thoughts, I was doing a lot of thought work at the time, and my thoughts, I wanted to get to a space where I felt like I could respond differently. And yet, when I was faced with a trigger, it just was creating all of this automatic and unconscious response within my body. And I felt so stuck in that. And it was so frustrating, because I knew all sorts of tips and strategies and tools and techniques and things from therapy to help me, move through that or process that differently. But it was still like, it was an automatic cycle within my body that would get triggered and it would run, and I would just have to endure it. It felt like. So for me, emotional freedom is having a space between trigger or challenge and my response to it that allows for a conscious choosing of how I want to not just respond, but how I want to experience my response. I don't want to have my nervous system causing all this hormonal and chemical reaction in my body, and then I'm just like gritting my teeth and trying to no, I'm going to respond in this very specific, awakened way. I want the whole thing to be in alignment, right? So emotional freedom is where you're just in alignment and you're calm inside and it's peaceful, and you're responding from the space of choice that's aligned with your core values and what you want to create in your life. So to me, that is the crux of emotional freedom. It's responding in alignment to your core values and what you want to create in your life.
I think it's key to highlight because I think a lot of people are going through this, especially if you experience it and I've experienced it. But highlighting what you said around when you go through these triggers and experiences, you want to react differently. You want to respond, but you just can't get to that place where you can do that, you know? And so I found that to be a big, big block for me. And it still is, you know, it's still a process of like softening around that. But I think that's huge just to highlight that, hey, you're not alone. But
Mm-hmm.
this really helps with that. And so,
Yeah, and actually that leads us right into this next little section about the science. So it's so cool to me to think about because I'm constantly reading all these research articles on microdosing and on just the studies that are done around psychedelics because it's fascinating to me. And it's very validating because when we're talking about emotional freedom in both of our terms, really, when we're talking about emotional freedom from both lenses, there are some very real neurobiological processes that are helping us get to this space of emotional freedom. And this is super cool. I'm not going to get too heady with y'all here, but I'm just going to touch on kind of the top three things that I've read about as far as what is happening when we are interacting with psilocybin with this plant medicine in our brains. Okay, so the most recent thing that I found is maybe the one I'm most excited about, and that is the fact that it literally slows the blood flow to the amygdala. And that's important because the amygdala is the danger sensing part of our brain. So in when I was just talking about my experience with encountering a trigger or a challenge and my body going in this automatic response mode, well, this this medicine supports slowing the blood flow to that area. And that means that our reaction is slower, giving us a little bit of space there so we can start to build awareness, which I think is super cool. So basically, nervous system activation is going to be slower. And then the second thing is that it quiets the default mode network. And this is the part of our brain where we're maybe ruminating a lot, or it's our self-referential part of our brain. So that's where we're really thinking about from a space of ego. And it's where our subconscious patterns, our drivers, our habits, our things that maybe we're not consciously thinking about are kind of at play. And then the third thing is that it increases what's called neuroplasticity. And this is a hot button word in the psychedelic community. But really, what's happening is something slightly different. There's this neuroscientist at Johns Hopkins University who is doing this super cool research around octopuses and serotonin. So if that sounds bizarre or interesting, look her up. Her name is Gul Dolan.
I love octopuses. They're so interesting, like the creatures, how they spin have you seen them in the jars and they can
Yeah.
Jars up. They seem like they're really smart. But yeah, sorry.
Yeah, they are super interesting creatures, very smart, very antisocial. And so since serotonin is what psilocybin kind of acts on, and serotonin is our social hormone, this researcher was doing all this work around seeing how, she gave these octopuses psychedelics. She gave them psychedelics and then watched how they behaved with each other. So look her up, super fascinating. But what she came away with was that psychedelics open this critical period. And why is that relevant for the healing journey? The critical period is where our brains are more plastic and we're able to learn new habits, learn new behaviors, basically install new subconscious drivers. This is where we begin to consciously choose how we want to respond in a situation. And when we're in this critical period, it is easier to install these subconscious loops and patterns that will pull you toward what you're in higher alignment with, versus letting the old stuff that was maybe born out of any other circumstance in your life, right? But you're able to put in new programs that support you moving and opening in your healing journey. So it's super interesting. But those three things are amazing. And I love all the research that has been going on around this, because it really legitimizes, I think, the healing experiences that we have in this space, and the science allows us to kind of anchor into and understand why it works, how it works, so we can then strategize kind of the best way forward that's going to maximize these very processes.
I love it. I was just getting ready to ask you why you love the science, because you're really into that. You're into the spiritual side too, but why you love it so much, and you explain that. But that's why I love this so much, is because this is the other half that I was missing. I am into the mystical, the spiritual, the rituals, the ceremonies, the prayers, the things that might not really make sense to scientists. And so that's why I love this, is because this is just the other puzzle piece that fits in for me. That's really allowing me to flourish. So I love it.
Yeah, having a little bit of structure or root around these like very spiritual principles is, I think it's a great intersection to be at, as far as healing and growing and learning and even for the movement itself. But yeah, so science. So how does understanding all of this and experiencing these biological processes, how is that creating emotional freedom? I think that's a good question to be considering, because sure, we've got the science, and how does that then lead us to this space of emotional freedom, right? And conscious choice. I think the answer is because we run mostly on autopilot, and there's biological reasons for that, because we just don't have the cognitive bandwidth to focus on all of the processes happening in our body, in our consciousness, right? So our brains have to compartmentalize. Our brains have to put most stuff on subconscious, and only bring to the conscious what needs to be paid attention to the most. And so that being said, there are some things that we do want to pay attention to, some things that we do want to change, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's my copy. And asking ourselves, is this serving us, is really helpful. A helpful question. I think that microdosing really allows us to tap into.
I'm always asking why. What's the point? Why? How?
Mm-hmm.
So this is good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's because these subconscious patterns drive our every choice, every decision, every interaction. And so I think it's helpful to look at them and see what patterns are there. What are the results I'm getting? Or rather, actually ask about the results first, because that's the felt sense experience, right, of the pattern. So what are these results? And then can we dial them back, walk them back to see what the root pattern is? And microdosing, along with these neurobiological processes, allows everything to slow down enough and quiet down enough that we can start to see emerge these patterns as they're happening, which is interesting. Let me give you a quick example of this. When I'm riding my bike, I go here in Phoenix, I go on long bike rides, and it's part of my healing practice. And I found kind of early on, and as I was in this process, I would find that if anyone was ever right behind me, I would feel so anxious. It would cause this huge amount of anxiety if somebody was right behind me, and my brain would start spinning. I'd be like, oh my gosh, I'm in their way. I'm slowing them down. I need to pull over immediately. Like I would just have this urge to like get out of their way so they could, so they could keep going. And so I started to do kind of some work around that, around what is it that's really happening in that moment. And with the help of microdosing and things slowing down, I was able to start to see some of the deeper things that were at play, right? And it even went right into that feeling of like, I don't have as much of a right to take up this space right now as I believe this other person does. Like it got deep, right? And so I'm working on these really deep programs that are impacting me when I'm, just out riding my bike. And that I was able to follow that thread all the way down with the help of this medicine and work through some really deep stuff and get to a space where I felt, when someone comes up behind me, I no longer feel responsible for taking care of their experience on the trail,
I wonder what other moms or whoever's listening feel when they put themselves in your shoes, because that's what I did. So imagine yourself riding a bike and these cars behind you, or maybe it's just two lanes and you're back.
Well, it's another biker, not a car. A car I would definitely want to get out of the way, but another biker.
Yeah, I mean, here, like, I don't know if the bike laws are the same everywhere. If there's not like a bike lane, the bike has the right of way over a car. And so there's a lot of bikes too that travel on the road.
Oh, sure.
And, I can imagine that feeling of like, oh, this car's behind me, like that. And even like, I think about like, if somebody's behind me, you have like, you're kind of scared but that example with the bike, it's interesting because yes, you do this deep work where it's like, hey, I have every right to be here and to take up this space as someone else. And it's deep work, and it's really powerful.
Yeah. Yes. It was. And that was one of those, threads that microdosing gave me the ability to then, just pull the thread and see where the attachments go. I was following the attachments to see what's at play. And I found out, I worked through quite a bit of things just from that one example, but absolutely the processes and microdosing allowed me to get to that space. So then when I'm in the moment now and someone's maybe behind me on their bike or even a car, I don't immediately get that sense of urgency that like, oh, I need to yield my experience to whatever's happening for them, because I've recognized that like they can take care of themselves, and I'm not going to hold them up. I'm still a considerate human being, but I'm not going to like risk my safety to get off the trail. I'm going to trust that they can go around me when it's safe.
I don't want to fall too behind on time, but do you see how this might translate or relate into other parts of our life? Like that feeling of trying to take care of everybody, or, that car of like worrying about everyone else instead of like, it almost seems like when you really just focused on taking care of yourself,
Mm-hmm.
all that anxiety and everything kind of like went away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right? Yes. And it's, and I talk a lot about energy consciousness, but I have a lot of level 4 energy, which is very much that caretaking energy. And so being able to reflect on what's under that level 4 and seeing if it kind of, spirals me down into feeling, that not good enough, or like I don't have as much of a right to take up space or any of that is key. So I think in any caretaking situation or any situation where you just automatically close off your needs.
Mm-hmm. So a question that comes up for me is there a way to work with this medicine, the plant medicine, the mushrooms, that's
Mhm.
different from using it like I would use pharmaceuticals? You know, is
Mhm. Yes. Yes. I mean, I think so. I imagine that people will see benefits no matter how they use it, but I think that there's so much that's possible with changing the way that you interact with your healing with this medicine, that if you're just taking the medicine and not doing the work with it, I just think you're leaving a lot on the table.
Mhm.
Yeah, I do. And specifically, so depending on what you're working through and what support you need, in more recent times, there's a couple of therapies that go really well with the psychedelic healing journey: our internal family systems, acceptance and commitment therapy, even somatic experiencing. Those are some more recent therapeutic modalities that really, really work well with the psychedelic space. And then on the flip side, there's or not on the flip side, but in conjunction with that, we've got kind of that coach, guide, mentor space, which, Grizz, that's where you and I hang out. And that, I feel like together we're creating, we're supporting and creating these conditions to allow people to heal more deeply.
You know, I just thought of, so we call our medicine the sacred blend, but I just thought of like, you know, us together, you know, that like sacred blend of the science, the spirituality, the, you know, all that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's deep. I love that. Yeah, we do have a sacred blend, I think, of science and spirituality and practicality and magic. And yeah, it's super cool. And that's where having a coach or guide or mentor is really helpful in this space. And it's different than therapy. And depending on where you are, you'll either choose one or the other or both. I have clients where I'm part of, like this team working in conjunction with therapists to create deeper shifts. However, with that being said, all of the biological processing, having somebody to help you through that, deepen into that in this specific way is really helpful. When I think about my own healing journey, kind of in old times, back way before psychedelics, when I was just doing, when I was taking antidepressants and anti-anxiety medications and doing therapy on and off, it was good work, and it was definitely processing, but there's this ceiling to that work, right? So I would find that I'd be learning all these things, and yet I wasn't like feeling them. I wasn't feeling the shift. I was processing, I guess, but there was a ceiling there. Versus now, it's way more. I spend a lot more time in an intuitive space. I spend a lot more time in an emotional, in a body space, in a somatic space, and less time trying to analyze, process. I'm trying, through kind of lessening the focus on the cognitive consciousness and opening up to the whole spectrum of consciousness, right? Emotions and physical body and environment and spirituality, everything, opening to everything. This medicine creates a far more holistic pathway to healing, and through that I feel like I understand myself, and I can connect with this like core authenticity more so with microdosing than I ever could. I didn't even know what that meant when I was doing therapy and taking, whatever antidepressant. I've been on a bunch of them. I couldn't even tell you what authentic self meant. Like, that term gave me anxiety. I had no idea how to contextualize that. And now I do. And this is why.
Well, this is a testament to, if anybody has a question for Amanda, she can answer it just like this, just how I asked her. So is there a way to work with this medicine that's different from how I'm using it, like I use pharmaceuticals? thank you for the answer.
Yeah.
That was perfect. Yeah, that was very thorough. But I think a lot of people can relate to it. It was good.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I think one of the key parts to this whole process, whether it's, however you're navigating your healing, is this shadow work. And I didn't call this shadow work when I was doing it, but um, I think that it's important to bring this specific term into the conversation. So I asked ChatGPT to very
What's
succinctly,
ChatGPT?
which one? The
Well, I
OG?
said, what's ChatGPT? I was joking. I assume everybody knows what that is. I feel like it's a household name now that
I think it is.
is making
Yeah.
everyone's lives a lot easier. I guess I don't know what to think about it, but yeah, no, it's cool.
It's a fun research partner. At least to point you in the direction that you can then take it from on your own. But anyway, so here's what ChatGPT says about shadow work. And this was like, it gave me an answer first that was like, like 10 parts. And if you've ever used ChatGPT, you're familiar with how it works. So I was like, can you like shorten it by a lot? And so here's how it shortened it. So it says shadow work is the practice of exploring and integrating the unconscious, often hidden parts of ourselves that we repress or deny. It involves self-reflection and acceptance to achieve greater self-awareness, emotional healing, and personal growth. I find that definition interesting, and it really does speak to a lot of the work that I've done in my own process that was heightened and magnified, I think, when I started microdosing versus from before. How about you?
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's it's a lot of work. It's not easy, but it's very rewarding, and it requires a lot of leaning in, trusting, following your heart. But for me, the medicine and the space, it's really softened the shadows, softened the triggers, and given me a different level of like understanding where I was coming from it from just a totally different program to where there was no trigger. It was a totally different way to look at it. Like it was magical. Yeah.
Yeah. So it basically shifted your entire inner energetic landscape. So the challenge no longer created a cascade of reaction in you.
Yeah. I mean, it's a silly example, but it's just like if you're saying something to someone and they're not responding to you, and you're like, then you start getting in your head, oh, they don't like me, or I'm not loved, or I'm not worthy, all this, and then come to find out they have a hearing problem, or maybe they're deaf, and it's a silly example, but it's just you get totally shifted to where you're not in this program where you're thinking all these things, and you're just more love. And in that example, you would just be like, oh, that's fine, he must be busy, it's okay, he's not responding. And you're just, it's a totally different program.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in my example with being on the bike, right, and having somebody behind me, usually a man, it was part of my kind of unpacking. But it's I think the shadow work there involved following the thread of discomfort, continuing to pull that thread of discomfort in order to bring new awarenesses to the surface, and allowing them really to come up and understand that, like, oh gosh, this situation, this anxiety that when I'm on my bike and I'm in front of somebody, and then my whole body tenses up and I'm feeling this anxiousness and this urge to like just get out of the way. That is, there's many threads contributing to it, right? And the shadow work then becomes what belief systems, what unconscious, energetic loops or patterns are happening right now that are resulting in this conscious felt sense experience of this unconscious part of myself. So the shadow work allows us to bring a little flashlight, or the microdosing, I should say, allows us to bring a little flashlight into our subconscious so we can start seeing a little more of these shadows. And through that awareness, we give them avenues to express and move so they no longer create this emotional inertia within us. And so through pulling those threads, through building that awareness, through doing the shadow work, right, of kind of looking at what beliefs I had about myself, maybe not being good enough or fast enough or athletic enough or whatever anything was going on in that moment for me, looking at that and building awareness allowed that energy to move. And so now when I'm on my bike, if someone comes up behind me, I'm super relaxed. I'm not taking on their experience anymore. I'm focused on what I'm doing and what's in alignment for me. While still being considerate, because that's one of my values is being considerate and connection based with others, but not in a way that sacrifices myself, not in that level 4 way that drops me down into level 1. So,
that makes me think of a story. I'm going to try to make it 30 seconds because I know we have some amazing tips that we want to share for the end of this podcast. But it reminds me of this past weekend. We actually did a 4th of July celebration on the weekend, and I brought my mom with me. But it was one of the first times where I wasn't taking on her energy and wanting to just make her happy and comfortable, right? And being stressed out. And when you said the example of like taking on the energy of the people behind you, I was able to not worry about having to talk to her the whole time so she didn't feel out of place at this new place. I released it, I that's the word that came to me when you talked about pulling threads. I released this energy where I felt like I had to like make her happy or take, like I'm her son and I just kind of did my own thing, experienced nature, walked in the forest, and she made friends, and it was a totally different experience and coming from a totally different program. And it was very freeing for me. So
that is an amazing example of looking inward, doing the work, and then seeing immediate results. Because it can be that quick when you shift and you change how you show up and you change the energy that you're bringing to a dynamic, to a challenge, to another person. You create a whole new ripple for that energy to move about.
New neural pathways, right? New, that's the mycelium network, the brain.
Yep. And when you continue to make those small choices over time, that's the thing about microdosing. Time is a necessary ingredient for the change. So when you continue to make those small choices to show up differently, and you are reinforced by these positive results, right? These results that feel more aligned with who you are and what you want to create, then through every small choice that you make, it gets a little more ingrained into your subconscious. It becomes a little stronger or deeper part of the fabric of your inner workings. And then eventually you don't have to think about it as much anymore because it's just automatic. Like when I'm on my bike, I don't even think about it if someone's behind me anymore. It's just automatic. Just I'm relaxed, I'm peaceful, and I'm calm, and it's not something I have to hijack anymore.
So we've been on the edge of our seats, Amanda, waiting for these tips.
Yes.
These tips that we can implement into our lives.
Yeah. I think one of the biggest thing that I can encourage people to do is shift into curiosity as much as possible. Curiosity is like, if you ever played like Chutes and Ladders, it's like the the one that takes you up a level, or or down,
Mhm.
closer to where you want to be, the one that
Yeah.
moves you faster. Curiosity.
Candyland. Is that Candyland? Did you ever
Candyland.
play that where you can get on the space and it has the bridge up to where you can skip the other spaces?
Yeah, yeah. So this is the vehicle, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Curiosity is the vehicle that will take you to these higher vibrational levels and get you most quickly to a space of conscious choice. So I'd say that's probably the very first thing I would do with that. And then the second thing is tapping into this idea of witness consciousness. I do a meditation that I've been meaning to record, and I will.
I love this meditation. Oh my gosh.
This is my
I'm the
note
biggest fan.
to an accountability. I'm creating accountability for myself to create this recording of this witness consciousness meditation that I've given a few times, and gotten a lot of really positive feedback that can help you shift your perspective. How would you say that has helped you shifting into that witness consciousness, Grizz?
It's amazing. It's like, it's just the music, the sound, everything. It's perfectly orchestrated, and you put together a really good guide. And yeah, so are you just gonna do that for the moms in the mentorship? You're gonna record a video, or are you gonna be able to give that to the public, anybody that's interested in?
Yeah, I would love to give it to anybody that's interested. So I think the first step is recording it and then figuring out like what's the best
Wow.
delivery
Okay.
system, right?
Nice. For
Yeah,
free. For free.
for free.
Free download. Okay. Nice.
Yeah, for
That's
free.
huge.
I think that would be beneficial to anybody doing this work, is to be able to access this first step in really the awakening process of getting into this witness consciousness.
Or just
Um,
reach out to you if they want it, I guess. Or are we gonna we could maybe post something too? But I guess if anyone wants it now, they could reach out to you, and there's a waiting list, I guess.
build the pressure, which is good.
Got a waiting. Yeah, we're gonna make a waiting list for this
Yes, interest list for the meditation.
meditation.
I love it. I'm on board with creating accountability. It does actually help me quite.
Let us know.
Yeah, so witness consciousness is another tip. The third tip is getting super aware of your energy and how it moves through you. And when I say energy, that might feel like, depending on whether you're steeped in my teachings or whatever you're doing, energy might feel like emotions. It might feel like thoughts. It might feel like physical sensations. It might be waves in relational cycles. Get super aware of how that energy is moving through you. And then the final thing, and probably the most important, I don't know why I put this last, but the final thing with any microdosing practice is intention and integration. Intention setting is essential. You want to be clear on what you want to experience. And we're not talking about setting, when I say intention, I'm not talking about creating an attachment around a specific outcome you want. I'm talking about intention in the way of what you want to experience. Like, what do you want to shift more into, more in alignment with? Openness, love, curiosity, learning, whatever type of intention you want to really anchor into that at every dose, every day, but definitely every dose. And then with integration, not just integration that you see out there in the media, that looks really good. Yoga, meditation, walks in nature, all of that is very powerful, very powerful ways to get deepening into your healing practice. But what I want you to really consider is your own unique energetic flow cycle. And one of the things that I focus on in our mentorship specifically, and this is the reason I focus on this so much, is because we are all different, and what works best for you in your healing practice might not be yoga. It might not be meditation. It might be something completely different. Grizz, we were just talking before this, and I was laughing because 5 years ago, if you told me that I would be, 5 years from now, if I'd be playing the Native American flute under random bridges and tunnels in the Phoenix and Scottsdale area, I would have been like, what the heck are you talking about? That's crazy. Who does that? No one does that.
Yeah, I'm
But
running around partying and doing all this back in my younger years. I'm sure, like a lot of us, never saw myself leading ceremonies in this plant medicine space. Always felt connected to the rainforest, but never thought I would be going to the rainforest, working with indigenous tribes here in Kentucky. And so, yeah, and even like playing the guitar, just this space has allowed so much just joy to flow through and expansion into my purpose, what I feel like is my calling. And I never would have been there without the plant medicine. So,
and that speaks to a lot to this last component, right? Intention and integration. What works for you might not be what works for most people. And that is okay. It doesn't have to. Or you can do this and this. Like I have found that the flute playing channels my energy, both generative and receptive energetic sensors. It channels it in the perfect way that creates this harmony that moves energy in me. And there's something out there for you, even if it's not yoga, even if it's not meditation. It's a matter of exploring and being open and using the medicine to help you get to your next, your state of emergence, really.
And I never thought of the mentorship like this until today. But among other things, I feel like this mentorship is helping moms tap into, I forget exactly what you said, but it was along the lines of helping them tap into their unique mechanism, flow, some energetic.
Energetic flow cycles, I believe.
But yeah, helping them tap into that. And so for you, it was the flute. For me, it's the guitar. I'm still learning. I've been playing for several years, but even doing this work more deeply, now I'm finding like I'm hitting this new chord I never hit before. And it sounds so different than 2-3 years of playing. And that is, opening up new doors and allowing me to just experience a lot of joy along my purpose. And so it's.
Yeah, I resonate with that. Gosh, I could probably talk a whole episode about how the flute playing has been like a microcosm and a channel and a vehicle in a lot of ways for my own healing.
So I'm excited. I don't know about you, but what these moms have hidden behind, like they're unique. Yeah. I mean, that's super exciting because I'm seeing it working in the space through the ceremonies. Like these people are like, I picked up the guitar and they were never a musician. There's people doing just amazing new things that they never would have done. And it's unlocking doors to this magical space.
Yeah. Yep. And these practices will absolutely lead you to that, as long as you are kind of doing work that supports you in moving in that direction. So yeah, I feel like, man, this was a great episode. Thanks, Grizz. I really value independence. Yes, liberty and freedom. Yeah, it's a whole new world out there with the latest iteration of this psychedelic movement. Very cool. All right, well, have a good week, everybody, and we'll see you next week. Bye.